Gus, one thing that we haven't talked about on this podcast yet, which seems so important, is how to make sure that SEO is aligned with the products of the company and what the company is selling. And this is what I would love to ask you about today. So, SEO and products, what is it and why is it even a consideration?
How I think SEO and how I do SEO really changed when my work became part of products. And the main reason is sometimes as SEOs, we just want to ship things. We want more pages. We want more of this. We want more of that. And we may be used to not outcomes, but to outputs. So we are just doing more things. But are we measuring those things? Do they actually make sense for the company? Are you bringing the right people in and all of that? And products also do a lot of testing. Are people using this? Are the bots using this, right? We're doing things for both audiences in a way. So I think having that product mentality, not just on the bidding of things, but the process, the outcomes, and what you learn along the way, it really changed how I think about SEO. So if I don't have a way to prove the impact of something in the future, like I try to put myself 6 months from now, how am I going to tell the story about this thing we did? And it could be a new page, could be structured data, could be paid speed, could be anything. If I don't have the elements now to measure and show the impact a few months later, then I question myself if I really need to do this, because we don't know if it makes any sense, if it has any impact or not.
So there are two things that you mentioned here that I would love to drill down on. The first thing is outcome, not outputs. And the second thing is kind of, and I'm going to tweak it with my own words, less is more. But that's a bit, the more I dig into the SEO world, the more I feel that it's very hard. Like as an SEO, you want to be like, okay, ranking on more keywords, optimizing your pages, maybe having more pages. Like the outcome takes sometimes a bit of time to happen, right? So what do you do as an SEO? It can be a bit frustrating, right? You optimize your pages, you go from 40 to 7 pages because this is what is actually going to get outcome. And then what? You do nothing for 6 months? Like how do you make sure that you strike the right balance?
Yeah, it's not about not doing anything else. It's about choosing a few things to do and go with them from start to end. Right? So if you implement a new piece of structured data, back in the days, I will tell a client, oh, we put all of this structured data on your pages. Great. Work is done. Work is actually not done at that point. The execution is, or it's until that point is complete. But measuring, does it actually do anything? Is Google picking this up? Is it showing anywhere in SERPs, or is it increasing your CTR? Like, how are we going to measure this? What is the reason we are doing this? We shouldn't just be doing things because Google said, right? And sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they nudge you in a certain direction that is not fully clear. And, things will vary depending of which company, which customer do you have. So for me, it's more about going through the process until the end. And maybe, let's say, you can pause. You finish the execution at a certain stage and you're going to go execute something else. But in a month, 2 months, 3 months, go back to see what was the impact of that thing. Now, you usually only know if there was an impact if you already knew from the start how you're going to measure that thing, right? That's why I love to write. There's a document that I took it from product people called the product requirements document. And then it's a long Word document on what do you want to do, the background, estimated impact, all of those things. And it also includes how you plan to measure this. And having that evidence at the start will align everyone to say, okay, we're going to measure the impact on this thing. So it's measurable in a way or another.
Awesome. And that makes a lot of sense. So to get back to the aligning SEO with products, so we understand the why it's critical. How do you actually do that? Yeah, how do you make this happen in a company?
I usually just sit with the product team. We share a common group of engineers, and we try to align like what are the things that both groups are doing. To give an example without giving too much detail, because I can't, product was doing an exercise to tag pages with different types of occupations. So this page is about software engineering, this page is about nursing, and so on. I use the tagging that they were doing for a different purpose and use that to create pages. So talking with people, I think, is the biggest secret, because you know the direction they're going, and you can maybe make some small additions to their work, right? Can you make sure that this tag appears in a certain place because that's where you need to use it? It's an extra step on your work. I'm not going to change your tagging. Your product's the one defining how this is going to be done and which page gets which information, but I'm going to use that to build something extra after the initial work is done by them. And sometimes it can be the other way around. If SEO says, we are doing this page type, product will say, oh, okay, we can, we need to put a banner here, we need to put a certain action to happen here because the opportunity is there and it aligns with what the whole product or what the whole company needs.
So, and I mean here, I guess here it's even more critical to have this alignment, right? Because so for context, you work at Indeed, and I guess here the product also is web pages, right? So it's not like you're selling shoes and like, hey, we're gonna, develop this new line of shoes, and we need to make sure that the online pages walking through the customer's experience of these shoes is aligned with what we're doing as a product. Here, the product are the pages. So it's even more critical, right? Would it be different in any other environment than Indeed, you think?
That's a good point. I usually, let's say if I went to an e-commerce tomorrow, I would still treat the website as a product, even though it's more of a means to reach the product. But that's where the shop is, right? That's the experience that people will have. The same shoes or the same clothes are available in a lot of different places. And often the experience is one reason for you to go to that place, right? Like we go to Amazon every day. We just assume they have the best price. And usually they do. Like most of the times when I compare it, they do have a better price. But it's also about the reliability. The product's going to arrive in 1 or 2 days. There are very few cases where they don't match the delivery date they promise. You're not going to have to create another login and do 10 other steps. Everything's in there. You already have it on your phone. We could order, and I think in the UK, you'll get, often you just get on the same day. Here, I wait 1 or 2 days, which is fine. But you go there for the website because everything is so smooth and easy to buy and you can trust it. So even though it's not the actual product, the physical product that's coming to your house, the website itself is a major reason why you buy it there and not somewhere else.
And I think you hinted on it a bit, but so working together with product teams usually means, when you're, in software development, I guess it would be the same in any other category, right? If you take a FMCG group, for instance, you would be working with engineers developing products, or at least putting together the processes to build products. And I guess that's kind of the question here. How do you make sure that you work efficiently with engineers according to your experience? And it's funny because Hussam, my co-founder, is an engineer, so I have a bit of an idea. But I'm interested to have your take on this.
Yeah, so my usual process will be, we have ideas in a roadmap. I have a PRD, which is this document with what do we want to see in that product or on that functionality. And from there, or somewhere in between, I'm already talking with the engineers and asking, hey, we have this idea. Is this doable? Is this too complex? And so they might have an idea like, oh, this is possible. We don't know all the steps, but we know it's possible. I know there's an API somewhere that will allow us to build this connection. So from the PRD, we're going to send them to the engineers. And if I know how to create some of the tickets, and some of them I will know, I start writing down the tickets and If there are other things that are way more technical and complex, they are the ones writing them. But you need to have a very clear objective to what is this supposed to do and what is the purpose and how it needs to show up. So especially because engineers don't necessarily live in an SEO world, they know about lots of things. They can be moved to another project and they can still perform really well. I try to make my tickets as clear as possible. So I'll always have things like I have the background, I have the work to be done, and I have a completion criteria, or in Scrum definition would be, they would call definition of done. I just finished a Scrum assessment this morning, and sometimes it's like kind of repeating what's the work to be done, right? But you need to make it very clear what's written in there. So back to structured data, maybe on the work to be done is we want to include this H3 under the price tag, and this is the template for the structured data. This is where I'm going to pull each information from, and part of completion, you need to run this through schema.org or run through Google structured data tool to make sure that it's actually getting picked up. So usually it will just be, okay, it's picked up, but you need to verify that to make sure, okay, this is actually complete, we can move on.
So the thing I know about engineers is that, I mean, usually, I guess it's a general rule, but you would have exceptions, is that they are very down to earth, right? It's a very scientific line of profession. And some people, I think I do for some aspects of it, see SEO as an art and not always a science. When it comes to technical SEO, it's technically a science, right? It's literally, it's not boxes to tick, but you see what I mean. It's like you have a clear roadmap, you know what you have to do, this is what works, this is what doesn't, you can split test stuff and so on. When it comes to off-page SEO, for instance, here we fall a bit more into the arts versus the science of SEO, because it's going to be about, hey, okay, we don't really know why, because SEO is keeping that very secret. Google is keeping that very secret in their algorithm to rank pages. But we know that having links from an authoritative website within your industry, which is an editorial link, which is one way, will help you. How much compared to a slightly less authoritative website? We don't know that much. If it's like a basic link versus an editorial link on a less authoritative, you see the point. Comes back to the art of it. How do you... First of all, is there this dimension in your work as well? And if so, how do you make sure that engineers grasp that?
I would say both things in SEO, both the technical part and the content/creative part. They're all very open to dependencies, and I try to treat things as directional. So sure, if you have everything work in structured data, there's a higher chance that things will work well. Or if your website is loading much faster, there's a higher chance you're going to rank a little bit higher. And it's the same with content, it's the same with links, right? We don't know what's the exact value of each link. And it maybe depends on your domain and depends of how Google classified your content, how Google classified the website that is linking to you. And so I tend to work on a direction. So if we see that things are working, okay, maybe had a 20% improvement this time, and we did for another country was 10%, or we need for another group of pages was 5%. Like, okay, there's a range in here, but they all move the needle. So you can stack one versus another. If one activity gives you a 10% increase in traffic and the other one gives you 5, now we're going to look which one costs more to do. Because maybe the 10% costs will take 6 months and the 5% will take 1. So I'd rather do several of the 5% and get a higher impact in the end, considering the resources that I have and all of that. I think that's one of the special things about SEO. Like, even when it comes to technical, you need to be very creative on how to solve things or how to find problems. I was reading a post this morning about canonical tags and how if there's certain elements that are added to a canonical tag, Google ignores the tag completely. So those elements are valid, it's just not valid for Google. So it's an interesting thing. You maybe you didn't do anything wrong. You had something else in mind when you added some more elements on the canonical tag, but Google will ignore them altogether.
Super interesting. Okay. So let's talk a bit about Agile in SEO, Gus, because you're kind of the expert in that. So what does it mean? I mean, let's start with something more simple and to put a bit of context. Why could it be useful for SEOs to work using the Agile framework?
Yeah, Agile, from what I understand, it's more or less a philosophy, right? It's a way of thinking, and one of the ideas behind Agile is how can you learn as you go. So you start building things, and maybe after a few weeks, more specifically talking about Scrum, you're gonna learn that idea you had, you thought about something better. So, or you already thought about an increment for that after, a month working on this. Now, on the old school methodology, you would keep doing the thing that you decided at the very beginning and maybe spend 6 months doing that. On Agile, you say, hey, I have a better idea for this. I have an improvement. Let's add this as a ticket, and let's get to do this now. And I always compare how I was working before, having direct access to engineers and having this constant workflow with them. It would be the same as the traditional old school method. I would put a list of things we wanted them to do. We're going to send to the engineers or the developers that work with your client. And, a few months later, we'd hear, oh, we fixed this, we fixed that. Now, sometimes I have an idea this week, but product finished something else that I can use. And suddenly, okay, that idea will have a much bigger impact. I'm going to do that one instead. So sometimes I plan my next week. I plan today, it's a Friday. I'm going to plan next week today. So I have everything I want to do. But if something else comes up that is more important, I have the freedom to move things out and complete work that became a bit more urgent. And I think it's a lot of the Agile mentality. Have you learned something new? Is there a more impactful way to do this? Let's, we're going to do after, maybe if it's really urgent, you add on the sprint, or you're going to do in the next sprint, but you're not going to wait 6 months until you have time to do this. So it's being agile, I guess, being quick and adapting to changes and to new things that you discovered, and adjust your flow to that as well.
So for those who, and I might be part of them, for those who are not really clear on what a sprint is exactly, for instance, what does it actually mean to work on sprints, and what's the purpose of it?
So a sprint is going to be a time box. So we work in 2 weeks, but it can be up to a month, between a week and a month, usually. So let's do the Scrum event. You're going to start with you have a sprint planning, let's say on Monday. You're going to meet with your engineers, and you're going to sit and say, okay, these are all the things we want to do. You have a backlog of tickets or requests in there. And you're going to discuss with them, what can we do the sprint? What's the objective of this next 2 weeks sprint? And so in this next 2 weeks, we want to tackle page speed. We want the website to load on an average from 5 seconds. We want to bring it to 3.5. So you already wrote a lot of those tickets before on the things that you want to do for that period. Maybe there are like 4 or 5 tickets they're going to do on this 2 weeks. Maybe one of them is an investigation on why so many JavaScript elements are loaded on the page but are not used. So on this 2 weeks, they're going to work on the tickets. Maybe halfway one of the tickets, it's an investigation. They realize, oh, there is a problem with this JavaScript is loaded because it's owned by a different team that collects information on our page. Are they really collecting this information? They're really using? This might be a separate ticket. It might be done in a feature sprint, but it's essentially what is the work? A sprint is what is the work that the engineers will do on the next 2 weeks.
Love that. So that's a typical sprint. You have a beginning, an end, and an objective by the end of the sprint. And that is, I guess, it's in the word, right? It's in the title. You go hard on this. So I guess you're not always sprinting, but that's a bit the idea here. Another thing that you mentioned in the discussion we had before this recording is daily stand-ups. So are those parts of the sprint to make sure that everybody is always aligned, that we are keep on learning on the things that we've discovered, that everybody is informed? How does it typically work, and why daily? I mean, I like to, spend 8 hours of my day crunching SEO. Why should I have a daily stand-up?
Yeah, so the official definition for a daily stand-up is to just discuss what are the impediments that you have. So not everybody needs to attend, or not everybody needs to come and talk, but is there a dependency with a different team, or it's someone not finding a way to fix a problem? That will be the official definition. What I see on my day-to-day, and what I actually prefer, is you give everyone a minute to talk on what they're working on. I get, especially with remote teams, I've never met any of the engineers that I worked with in the last 3 years. So it's also a tiny bit of a social moment in there. So it's like, oh, I already started doing this, and I don't know, maybe today I'm finishing at 5. I'm only here for another half an hour because I'm going to pick up my daughter and gonna have ice cream.
Hey, if you're still listening to this, you probably find this conversation interesting, and that means that others might too. So the best way you can support this podcast for free is to leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this show. This helps the podcast more than I could say. It means other SEOs can learn and get access to our amazing guests, and that will mean the world to me. All right, with that being said, back to the episode.
Or, you have this like little moments that you can connect with people as well, but it's kind of that moment to discuss what are they working on, what are the impediments they have, and you just pass to the next person. So it takes half an hour, the official 15 minutes, but we do it in half an hour. And then for me, it's that moment of the day to be close with the engineers, understand maybe if they're about to finish something, I can already inform a different team. They're still working on this, but they are planning to finish today. So you kind of keep people on the loop. In when I'm having different meetings or when I'm talking to different people who want to know how close we are to complete something.
A sprint will be, okay, we have a project that we want to, have a sprint on. So let's define this 2 to 4 weeks kind of time box, and let's get it done. On a more macro level, how do you actually integrate SEO in product roadmaps? Because we can easily fathom that, product roadmap will hardly be 2 weeks, right? Unless there is it's just a tweaking of an existing product. When you're developing product or working on big, projects, how do you integrate this SEO within the product roadmap?
Yeah, so I usually will meet with the product person and we'll have a common roadmap, and then we can stack versus each other what do we expect that is going to have a higher impact. You're never guaranteed, right? A few things you can do that you can estimate really well. Maybe if it's something that we already did 6 months ago and this is a new version. So, okay, you already expect, you've seen a good impact in the first time. It's likely it's going to happen again. And some other things you don't know. But you have a guesstimate on how good something might be. So I will do let's say I start an SEO roadmap. I'm discussing with my SEO peers. I bring some engineers informally to talk about a certain thing. Oh, we want to do this thing. Is this possible? What do you think about that? and then we sit with engineers, or we sit with the product team, and we put those two together, and it will take several sprints to be done. Maybe it's you have a plan for 6 months, or you have a plan for a year, and you're gonna tackle one by one. I try not to have too many things running at the same time. I rather have a roadmap that has 4 items, and throughout the year we're gonna discover a few more to put in, instead of making a huge plan and working on 10 tracks at the same time, and everything is moving like very slow, and you don't have results for anything, and everyone gets stressed. And I rather have 2 things running at the same time, and I get to finish one. I can celebrate the results, then finish the second. Maybe the second doesn't work as well, but you already have a win for the year, and the third and the fourth are halfway through. So I think it keeps a bit of my sanity to have fewer things running at the same time, but doing them well, because it's, sometimes I think, oh, this is doing nothing. And then a month later, there's an explosion of impact. So yeah, talking with everybody. And when I say product, it also includes talk with your engineers, talk with people from UX, talk with people from content, because they might be working on things similar to you or that complement each other. I've had this with UX before, that both SEO and UX wanted to do the same thing. It was just when I came in, we had the same base idea for different reasons. And once I got to talk with the person who was running the UX initiative, I realized that she was way ahead of what SEO thought. SEO was, let's get a cupcake done. And she was like, I want to do a wedding cake. It was like, you know what? You already thought way ahead of me on this. I'm going to let you run it. I added my little requirements, a little frosting that I need, and just going to take the work that you've done, and being very clear with everybody about it, right? We are doing this now because that person managed to do this before me. So we are just, piggyback on the work that UX did, and, give credit to people, because it also shows how integrated your team is, that you're not wasting resources, you're not doing the same thing twice, you're not fighting with each other. There will always be things for you to own and things for other people to own. So being mindful of that will let everything move much faster.
So I love the wedding cake analogy. What I like talking with SEOs, they will always have examples, right? And usually it's the things that they are thinking about lately. So are you thinking about a wedding, Gus? Is that where you bring up the the wedding cake analogy?
It just came out of the blue now. I've been married for 2 years now.
Oh yeah, okay. So it's done. It's done.
That part's already sorted. I could have some cake today, though.
I could use some cake as well.
That'll be useful.
No, that makes sense. And what I also like about what you mentioned, Gus, is so those within the big project, right? Within the big product roadmaps, you have multiple sprints, and not only does that make sense, it also, for the motivation part, when I have a big task in front of me that can be a bit daunting and discouraging, it's absolutely critical to cut it into small pieces to have this like instant gratification on something that will take time. But so you kept on being motivated. I can only imagine how much more relevant that is when you have teams working on these things, right? And like, hey guys, this is the end of the 2-week sprint on this 10-month project, but hey, we did it. Let's celebrate. Let's have something, cake, for instance. So yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Something else that you mentioned a bit earlier in our conversation is writing product requirements documents. And so this is the thing that I'm like, okay, what does that have to do with SEO? So I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into this. What does it mean to write those type of documents, and why is it something you brought from products?
Yeah, so I think the idea here is to explain properly what you want someone to build. And sometimes it's also for yourself to understand what you want to be done, right? Because we are all full of great ideas every day, and they're just popping in and out. And I've had situations way back in the day that I was very excited about something, and once we finished, I was, why did we build this again? Why did I want to do this thing? And I can't find why it was so special. I can't find any way to show impact to my clients. And all honesty, it's easy to forget, like what was your hypothesis behind something, right? And so for me, this document, you're going to have a background about why you want to do this. You can explain the opportunity. In our case, I tend to do a lot of MVPs, the minimal viable product, to test in one country or test in a group of pages before I roll this out to 20, 30 different subdomains. You also explain your measurement, the technical depth, like what teams need to be involved in this. Do you need UX to be involved? Do you need engineers? Do you need someone else to be part of this for this whole vision to be executed and measured the right way? So I've had cases in the past where I had this brilliant idea and I told my manager, oh, we want to do this thing. And, it's probably only 3 weeks of work. I'm going to do the PRD. But I spend a whole day writing the document. And when I'm getting towards the end to explain how we're going to measure it, I'm like, I'm not so sure I can really measure this. And I kind of fell off, was in love with the idea, was kind of like melty, like maybe this is a bit... So by the end of the document, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be happy doing this. Like, I want proof that this actually does anything. So I realized that the idea wasn't good enough or wasn't ready. Maybe I'll revisit it in a few months if there's a new variable or if, I learned something new that I could find a way to prove the impact. But this is also, if you're talking with your client or your manager and you come back after you release the feature, they say, oh, but I don't like the way you're measuring this. Like, well, we all agreed on this before. Like, you saw the document, you had points on it. So if it's a failure, it's everyone's failure. But the more eyes that you have on something, it's a lower chance that, people will disagree with the method or with the measuring, because you've discussed before, you agreed on it before. And I find it way easier to give someone a document and say, read in your own time, and you can leave comments if something's not clear, and we can, get a constant feedback until we feel it's ready, versus, you have 10 minutes on a call and I direct you to believe how great this is. Gives you time. Maybe you have you're reading, having a coffee, you're not with that pressure that someone is at the screen looking at you like, are you going to prove this or not? So I find it really useful to refine ideas and get more confident that what we are doing is actually a good thing.
Makes a lot of sense. Continuing on the parallels with the startup world and basically the agile world, how do you develop an MVP when it comes to SEO? Like, how do you do that? And if I may add a bit of flavor to this, it's like in any case, you're only going to know if your SEO efforts are going to have results at least a few weeks from now. So what does it mean to developing a minimum viable product in SEO? Because it's like things can take so much time, and if it's minimally viable in SEO, does it have all the impact and effect that you want it to have? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think what you have to include on the MVP is it's the minimum to prove that impact, right? There are always new things that you can add in the future, but if you have the basic version of that, it's enough to prove that it actually will do something. So let me think of an example here. We wanted to do, we have some long form content pages, and a lot of those will mention salaries, but over time they go stale. So we wanted to see, can we run a script that will look at this information and will update the salary? So we're going to keep giving job seekers, the number that you're looking for. And so before we develop something that will say, every month we're going to pull the information from here, from there, it's going to keep running, updating the salaries. Maybe we want to say, how often do the salaries change? Because maybe we don't have enough data points that will change from 50,000 to 52,000 in a year. So, okay, well, it's not a really big difference. It's still an estimation. Maybe we don't need to do this every week because the number will remain the same. Or you want to do, let's just do in a group of pages and see if we can nail this information. If the update actually works the way we are expecting to work. Maybe some salaries are displayed as yearly, some are per month, some are per day. So how do we capture all of these variations and so on? So I think the MVP is just to nail that basis. And from the MVP, you're going to learn loads of other things that work differently than you thought and things that you can start picturing as an improvement for it. But it kind of just helps you to get something released fast enough to see if it actually does something, if it makes sense to go much further before you spend 6 months and realize, oh, this wasn't good, and then you wasted 6 months. If you just wasted a month, you still have 5 months to potentially do other things that will have a positive impact, but your commitment is much smaller and gives everyone more confidence that this is the right project to keep working on.
How do you choose the pages on which you want to run those tests, all the products, all the themes? The reason I'm asking this question is, hey, if I'm the CEO of Indeed, right? What's the name of the CEO of Indeed, actually? I don't fucking know. Chris Hams. I'm Chris, right? And I'm like, hey, I have a business to run, like I want everything to perform as good as possible. And any page that you're going to run MVPs on is potentially pages I'm going to lose traffic on or lose conversion on or lose, whatever on. How do you make that choice of saying, hey, I have an idea that could help us get 10% more traffic month on month, whatever, but I need to prove it. And for that, I need a real page, right? Because we're going to run real tests. How do you choose which pages to run those tests on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it will vary quite a lot. Some teams will say, let's do this on a country that doesn't have a whole lot of traffic because there's a high risk. So if we lose something, we lose less. And some others will be, let's do this in our biggest market first because that's where we can have the biggest win. Or maybe we'll just do in a group of pages, so just do in a category or in a page type. So there's no right formula for this. It really will depend on how risky something is. A lot of those things in SEO are not too risky. I would say changes that you make in product will have a higher risk than SEO things. Also because we are at risk of a lot of external factors, right? There's a Google update. Your competitors are doing things as well. So things might go down if you do nothing as well. So there's no guarantee that, we won't touch anything. Traffic is going to remain the same. In what?
I love that, actually. And that makes me think of another question. Like, say you launch your MVP and you expect some form of results that will prove whether the test is successful or not in about 2 months. And so the moment we are recording this episode right now, we are mid of August 2024. And Google is rolling out a core update right now. How can I make sure that in 2 months, the consequences or the results I'm getting are from my change versus, external factor?
Yeah. So I usually try not to measure changes while an update is happening, which is not always possible. Like last year, I think there were updates one after the other. There was a core update and then HCO, and there's something else happening. So you're like, do I wait? Do I sit here and wait 6 months? Or no, I can't. But a lot of the testing that I do will have SEO A/B tests, which is, I'm going to try, I will simplify it because the only way I know how to present this. I'm sure there are more granular details that only a data scientists will be able to tell you. But let's say we want to do a change on a page title. We want to see if, the oldest trick in the book, people put a 2025, first week of the year, all the titles, all the guides were already updated for the new year. Does this work or doesn't? Do people believe that it was already updated even though it's the first week of January? I don't know. Let's test it. You get a group of pages where you change the title to 2025 and a group that you don't. How do you define those groups? You look at there are tools that will split the traffic for you, but you want to find the two groups of pages that have the same level of traffic over, let's say, the last 2 months. So you're gonna look in a graphic once the numbers are crunched, and you're gonna see two lines that move almost together. Ideally, it's one over the other, but it's almost perfect. And once you do your test, you want to compare how much the new group grew versus the other. So if your new page titles are growing higher than the other group, that's how you know that difference. That's the impact that I made. Sometimes the line goes down, sometimes the line stays the same, and that's why after a month you can say, okay, nothing really happened here. Do we want to keep testing this, or do we want to revert this change? Or maybe the change just had no effect, but because it had no effect, you're gonna keep as it is. The year is down. People are actually optimizing those pages. You change the year, but we don't just do that. It's not good. I think that people will realize that. But I just wanted to give an example that is easy to understand. I do tons of page title tests, but I'm looking at more meaningful things to do rather than changing the year.
So, yes, what's the number one mistake people make when they want to integrate Agile in SEO? What have you seen, not being the thing to do?
It's not what I haven't seen people not doing. It's something that I only learned after I started doing Agile, is to look for continuous improvement. So I released something with internal linking at some point, and it had a 10% increase in traffic to those pages. That's great. Can we do a few more tweaks in there and increase it to 15%? So 10% is already great, but if the functionality is already built, can I just do, in this case, I could just do tweaks myself. Didn't even need engineers to be involved from this point onwards. So can I do a few changes in here and squeeze a bit more out of this? Or if I use just one more ticket, can I expand this coverage? So it's not measuring things and think you want to measure and it was good, you can just leave as it is. There are different ways to keep trying to make things even better than you already got in the first place.
Love this. Gus, anything else you'd like to add to SEO and product teams and working in Agile?
I think SEO and testing is one of my favorite things in SEO now. I think people are missing of not doing it. I finally get to talk numbers with people. So I'm not saying, oh, well, traffic went up 30%. Traffic went up 30% because of this thing. And I can also talk about the revenue that this specific thing did. And suddenly the conversation is not, oh, SEO things are doing this, but this specific thing we built, this is the one is what's moving the needle. And we want to do a second version of this. We want to do a third version. And then you have a different eye and a different attention from stakeholders because they know what is working, what is not. You can say what didn't work as well, that's fine, but you will have a more, a more awareness of what works and can double down on that thing. And that builds a lot of confidence, a lot of interest from people. So SEO, A/B testing, if you have medium to large websites, I think it's going to be beneficial for you.
100%. Love that. And I think that's a bit the key takeaway of anybody working in a team that is not sales, where the actual enterprise value is a bit harder to define, right? Because you can have some very operational functions or let's say support functions. As that's one of the things that I experimented when I was working in corporate treasury, so a niche in finance. The moment you can take your job from supporting the business and like operational tasks and just performing the day-to-day to actually being able to showcase value, return on investment, savings, or even, as you just mentioned here, revenues, this is where you become an A-star player, because this is like, hey, no, those guys actually get it. They are doing the job, but they are on top helping the business to grow. And this is where you get the value. And as SEOs, thanks for the advice, Gus, here. A/B testing is the key. Gus, thank you so much for coming on SEO Gurus. If people want to find out more about you, what you do, I saw you are going to speak on the 20th of September. Where should people go?
Yeah, first, thank you, John, for inviting me to the show. Hopefully I pronounced it right. And you can find me a lot on LinkedIn. I'm talking a lot about SEO A/B tests and other SEO and product things. My website is guspelogia.com. I have a few more speaking gigs coming up this year. The first one is the DM conference in Belfast. And then I have one in Dublin also in September, and a couple of online ones coming later in the year. So let's connect on LinkedIn and other places, and we can talk about anything SEO over there.
I love it. We'll put all the links in the description. And the thing I love to see that I didn't know even is that you have a playlist on Spotify of all the podcast appearances you had about SEO. Here we go. So check it out, Gus. Amazing insights, lots of stuff, lots of blog posts, lots of podcast episodes. Gus, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And enjoy the week. Go have some cake.
We'll definitely do. Hey, thank you so much for making it to the end. For more content updates, visit our website at ghapodcast.com, and don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn for more tips and insights on SEO. See you in the next episode.